The Best of Our Knowledge explores topics on learning, education, and research. On today's program, First Lady Jill Biden visits the Northeast as part of her Investing in America tour. A New York cannabis industry insider prepares to open a retail dispensary upstate. And a new study out of UMass Amherst takes a closer look at Lyme disease. It's all next on The Best of Our Knowledge. You're listening to The Best of Our Knowledge. I'm Jody Cowan, filling in for Lucas Willard. First Lady Jill Biden recently embarked on a multi-state tour to highlight workforce development and student vocational programs. Earlier this month, Biden visited Beta Technologies, an emerging aerospace company in South Burlington, Vermont, as part of her Investing in America tour. The Best of Our Knowledge's Pat Bradley was there and sends this report.
The First Lady's plane arrived as a light drizzle fell. She and U.S. Education Secretary Miguel Cardona immediately walked across the tarmac into Beta Technologies' headquarters. The aerospace company formed in 2017 to produce zero-emission electric aircraft. The First Lady's visit was the last of a four-state Investing in America tour, highlighting career and workforce training and how that integrates with the Biden administration's education pathway initiatives. Biden spoke with other students before joining state and local officials at a podium at the opposite side of the hangar to talk about the importance of the trades and workforce training. Burlington Mayor Merle Weinberger, a Democrat, noted that the high school is planning a new technical center at the airport.
One of the reasons that we're so excited to do that is to reduce the barriers to young Vermonters being able to be directly engaged in these exciting industries and the jobs of tomorrow. You know, sometimes there's a stigma around tech ed. I think this is going to be the coolest place to be in the years ahead.
Education Secretary Cardona highlighted the theme of the trip, Investing in America. He told the crowd that traditional education has been a bystander to economic development, leading to hundreds of thousands of high schoolers to graduate each year with no pathway to successful careers.
When we invest in helping our students learn skills that'll help them get great careers in the future, when we invest in giving our young people more opportunities for hands-on learning that shows them new possibilities for their life and for the lives of their loved ones, we invest in America. That's never been more important. And I always say there's a tsunami of well-paying jobs coming. And we need to make sure this generation of students is prepared to ride that wave.
Vermont Governor Phil Scott often reminisces about being caught between college prep and vocational classes. The Republican said it's important to make smart investments for students, workers, and communities.
I think we've all experienced just how important the trades are, especially when our car breaks down, have an electrical problem, or a water heater leak. And there's no denying how important they are to our future, especially when you consider the role they'll play in energy, telecom, and our overall economy. So here's the point I'm trying to make. Everyone, from teachers and guidance counselors to parents and policymakers, needs to make a real effort to end the stigma around CTE and trades training, because these are great careers that present endless possibilities for talented and hardworking kids.
The First Lady talked about how the Biden Education Pathway Initiative can help provide options.
For most people, a high school diploma alone isn't enough to find a great career. But they don't often need a four-year degree to pursue their passions either. Millions of new jobs in infrastructure, clean energy, and manufacturing are being created. These positions pay well, and many of them require associate's degrees, certificates, and other hands-on instruction, and not four-year colleges. Still, as I heard today, a lot of high school students don't necessarily know how to get from earning their diplomas to earning a living.
Biden added that efforts in Vermont, like the internships and educational outreach at Beta Technologies, reflect the future of the workforce and the economy.
The students who are with us today are learning what it takes to design airplanes and maintain electric vehicles. They're exploring jobs that didn't even exist when many of us were in high school. With dual enrollments, shadowing programs, and paid internships, high school students are getting experience and credentials that will give them a jump start on college or a career.
Biden noted her husband is making community college and career-connecting learning top priorities in his budget proposal. She noted the Department of Labor had just announced an $80 million grant competition to support innovative training programs for jobs being created under the Investing in America initiative. Reporting for the best of our knowledge, I'm Pat Bradley.
You're listening to the best of our knowledge. I'm Jody Cowan, filling in for Lucas Willard. New York State's adult-use cannabis industry is ramping up after a slow and often confusing start. As the Office of Cannabis Management awards new licenses across the state, current cardholders are working hard in preparation to open shop. I spoke with Josh Mirsky, manager and license holder of the soon-to-be-open Stage 1 dispensary in Rensselaer, to find out what it took to get this far and how he was able to cut through the green tape.
We were very fortunate to be selected as one of the first 36 licenses in the entire state. And we are going to be setting up right in Rensselaer with a view of the entire downtown Albany skyline, which we're super excited about. We have a beautiful spot at 810 Broadway. I'm going to take great pride as a dispensary owner in educating the public about the beautiful cannabis plant, which honestly has so many more benefits to human civilization than anyone actually knows. So a part of my truth and my partner's truth, we all had a little bit of run-in with the law back in 2011 surrounding the cannabis plant and its prohibition. I won't go into too much more detail than that, but that enabled us to apply for this license and get looked at amongst a group of people that were able to get these social justice involved licenses, the card license program. And the first 300 of those licenses went out to justice involved individuals who had been charged with a crime under the prohibition of cannabis laws.
And this is something that's really interesting to me. It seems like it's a process that's pretty unique to New York.
You know, it's a point of contention, obviously, as well. I think it's a wonderful thing that New York has done, enabling the people who were negatively affected by that prohibition on this plant an opportunity to jump into the space first before the MSOs or the multi-state operators, which you get those oftentimes in the cannabis space. When a state legalizes it, those MSOs come in and cannibalize the market. They're already well-equipped and well-funded, and funding is something that is very hard to come by in the cannabis industry, especially for a newly starting company. So when you're already well-funded and you're already well-resourced, it becomes a lot easier for you to jump in the space and cannibalize the smaller businesses. So this way of helping social justice and justice-involved individuals who were negatively affected by the prohibition of cannabis get into the market first and give us some time to get set up and established and allow us to build brands. Then when the MSOs come in, you know, we'll already have a foothold and we won't be so easily pushed out.
When it comes to people in the industry, how has that attitude been, or how have you been met?
We've actually been, the cannabis industry is very welcoming. We've been met with a lot of very excited, congratulatory people who are just very happy that we're getting into the market, very proud of New York for launching the program in the way they are, and very happy for us to be a part of it. We're very far through our banking application, I should say, but one of the questions that they asked us on our questionnaire was, had we ever been charged with a crime in the last 20 years? And they know that actually we had to have been basically to be able to qualify for this license right now and get this license. So that was something that they were okay with, right? Normally in a banking situation, I would say that that wouldn't be okay, but in cannabis banking, we're being welcomed with open arms, regardless. So it's pretty cool. And also we all were required to be successful business owners outside of our cannabis convictions. So we dusted ourselves off after our conviction. We left the industry, so it's called legacy. We're no longer legacy operators. We've left the industry for the last decade and moved on with our lives, and we started other businesses that have all gone on to be successful. My partners have a very successful real estate company. I've run a successful recording studio. My wife manages our Airbnb very successfully. So we've managed to go on to just do other things to bring in revenue to our families and prove that we know how to run a business. So that was part of the selection process, and we're proud to be able to say that we qualified.
Where are you in this process now from, getting the license to being able to open these doors up and start selling some cannabis?
We currently are doing our build out. We have our post-selection app in with the OCM. Once our banking is finished and approved and we have our account, we can apply for our certificate of authority to collect sales tax on behalf of New York State, because we also plan on selling non-cannabis items. And you need to do that, like, papers, bongs, apparel, T-shirts, things like that. We hope to be delivering by May and doors open sometime in June. So we're very close.
In the last few months and the last year, really, there's been all of these industry expo events.
Oh, they're great. I think the biggest win that I get from those is networking. So meeting all of the other dispensary owners at several events and developing and cultivating these relationships with them, because we're like a large network. All these, we're the first ones. And so we all are kind of in this together because we're up against the same kind of situations, and when one of us figures it out, we kind of share it with the rest of us. We're all there's a lot of camaraderie amongst that group, so that's being able to meet all of them in person and then see them again consistently has really helped to kind of forge these relationships. It's also a great opportunity to meet with farmers and processors, which is really, really instrumental in helping us get everything off the ground, finding the right product for our store. There's a lot of product out there. There's all sorts of flour, all sorts of oils and edibles, and I think there's a good product for everyone out there. We have a very specific line that we're trying to carry, and a very specific group of people that we're going to try to cater to. We're basically kind of hand-picking everything and making sure we are exceeding the requirements of the OCM on testing guidelines and on things, and we're really doing the best that we can to negotiate pricing that will be affordable for our clients. So being able to meet with the growers on a regular basis and continuously have these conversations with them really helps as well. So I'd say networking is the biggest. And then also a lot of these events have people from OCM at them as well. Communication in the beginning, because it's so new and they were understaffed, was very difficult. So being able to see OCM people in person and say, hey, that really helped us too. What they want is to get the farmers cannabis sold. Before they had given any dispensary licenses out, they had been working with farmers and processors for 2 years, right? So they owe those farmers a lot, and what they need is to get their products sold. So they are very helpful in helping us try to do that. I got an email from OCM yesterday and about what can they do to help. So I think they're getting there, but it's just so new and so early, just working out the kinks.
You as a business owner for a number of years, like, you kind of have a model in mind. The farmers have a model in mind. It's
Yes.
like, where's the guidance?
I think the OCM and the regulatory bodies are allowing us to work all of those things out on our own, which, we'll see if that works out. So as far as pricing goes, and they're leaving a lot of that up to us to negotiate for ourselves, which is fine. I think what's happening now is the market is already going through a correction period based on what's happening in New York City. And New York City is a very robust black market. There's like 1,500 storefront and delivery services operating in the shadows, or actually really out in public. Sticker shops, they're called. So there are a few different things that everyone in the supply chain really cares about. And it's an organization called CANNY. It stands for Cannabis Association of New York. They're one of the first lobbying kind of associations or kind of cannabis associations in New York that is there to help push legislation in the right direction. So we went with CANNY to Lobby Day, and I spoke with several local legislators and their staffs about some of the things that we would like to see changed in the law. And one of those things is the potency tax, and one of them is enforcement. So enforcement meaning getting these kind of black market shops under control. Another issue is the potency tax. The potency tax doesn't get levied at the time of sale to the consumer. The potency tax gets levied between the processor and the dispensary. So the processor has to add the cost of the potency tax into their cost that they sell to us. It artificially inflates the cost. Then we have to then bear the brunt of that cost and increase the price of our product in order to do that as well. And then it appears that there's a 13% cannabis tax, 9% that goes to the state, and 4% that goes to the municipality. But in reality, the tax is much higher. It's much closer to 25% once you factor in the potency tax. And that potency tax is based off of the percentage of THC in the product. And each thing, whether an oil or a gummy or the flower, is rated differently. But just to give you an idea, it's probably $3 to $5 an eighth of tax to us. That is a significant blow to us. And if we were to just do a blanket tax at the end, and it may be high, it may end up being higher than 13%, but even if it was 20%, that's still lower than the 24% in Massachusetts, and it would still leave the state revenue neutral by the calculations of CANNY. So we are really pushing for that, as opposed to what to us looks like less transparent and a hidden tax. The consumer is just going to see the 13% tax and think the state's charging 11% less than Massachusetts. That's great. But the bottom line is that the tax is baked in before it even gets to them. So you're seeing higher prices on the shelves, and that is some of the complaints that you're getting out of New York City is the prices are coming in a little higher than people anticipated, and that's why. So
something that you mentioned before that's a big part of this is this testing and grading process.
Correct.
Is there a national standard for this, or is the grading process or the kind of regulations different from state to state?
They are different from state to state. So there are definitely windows that you have to stay within for things like microbes and yeast and mold and heavy metals, and so there are certain things that are definitely across the board, state to state, exactly the same, but there are others that differ. In the capital region, we have kind of a very unique scenario where we have a really, really large group of consumers that are already used to shopping in dispensaries because Massachusetts is so close. And they don't have a black market connection or a gray market connection. It's not something they're even interested in. They want to know what they're getting. They want to be able to scan the QR code on the back of the eighth and see that there's no heavy metals in it and that there's no mold or yeast on it and that it's going to be healthy to consume. They want to know that their gummies were made in a commercial kitchen and that they went through rigorous regulations and testing. They want to know all of these products are going to be safe to consume. So we have a large group of Capital Region people that have been doing that already. I think we're positioned in a unique way that we're going to have a lot of those clients.
If there's one thing that upstate New York could bring to the cannabis industry, whether that's a particular flavor, whether that's a particular strain, what's the upstate signature?
There's been a lot of cannabis grown in upstate New York for a very long time. Sour Diesel is from upstate New York. It's one of the most world-renowned strains. So what I think upstate New York is going to bring to the cannabis industry is some of the best cannabis to ever be grown in the world. And I think that it might take us a couple of years to get there in the legal market. I think on the black market side, we already have some of that. Haze is a strain that comes to mind. Sour Diesel is another strain that comes to mind that people that are from New York and people love and have stood the test of time and are sought after, and the genetics are hard to come by for both of those strains right now. So I think that New York is, now that we don't have to hide in the shadows while cultivating our strains and creating our genetics, I think New York's going to create some of the best genetics in the game. That's what I think is going to happen.
Best case scenario with Stage 1 dispensary, where do you see yourself and your business in 5 years from now?
With 3 successful locations going, because that's the maximum they'll allow. But we plan on trying to grow to that as quickly as they'll let us, and with a brand that is recognizable throughout the industry. We are developing an apparel line to go with our brand, so we hope to have successful apparel out there. T-shirts, hoodies, hats, and all that, patches. And we really plan on becoming a force in the educational community regarding cannabis, and helping to make sure that stigma gets lifted and that people understand the benefits of this plant fully and can come in and get educated at our dispensary.
That was Josh Mirsky of Stage 1 Dispensary. More information on their official opening and available menus at stage1dispensary.com. You're listening to the best of our knowledge. You're listening to the best of our knowledge. I'm Jody Cowan, filling in for Lucas Willard. As temperatures warm across the Northeast and tick activity increases, a new study finds the blood of white-tailed deers kills the bacteria that causes Lyme disease. The research comes from the New England Center of Excellence in Vector-Borne Diseases at UMass Amherst. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention awarded the center $10 million in 2022 to support its work to prevent and reduce tick and mosquito-borne diseases. The best of our knowledge's Jim Levulis spoke with Dr. Steve Rich, the center's executive director, about the study.
The experiment that we conducted shows that the blood of deer kills the bacterium that causes Lyme disease. And this was work done by a graduate student in my lab. It's very sound work, and it's very interesting because what it tells us is it tells us a little bit about the natural circumstances of the Lyme bacteria and where it can exist and not exist. So we know that the natural environment for Lyme disease bacteria is in ticks and mice. Ticks get it from mice, and then they give it to other mice, and it's just a cycle that's perpetuated. And we've known for some time that deer are part of the cycle and that they feed ticks, but for one reason or another, they don't support the growth of the Lyme disease bacterium. And so this experiment just demonstrates that it's really something in the blood, and it's what that something is still to be decided, but it's something in the blood that of deer that kills Lyme disease bacteria. And is that a cure? No. It doesn't mean that we've stumbled on a solution that people can utilize deer blood to prevent themselves from getting Lyme disease. That's not what we're proposing. But it does provide some insights because it tells us that there's something about deer blood that kills Lyme disease bacteria. And so the next step now will be to figure out what that is, and can we use pharmacological mimics or drugs that mimic that to induce that effect in things that we care about, like ourselves and our pets.
And to those next steps, are you able to detail what they might be in terms of research now that this study is out there?
Yeah, so we'll go back and we'll probe to find the particular, presumably it's a protein in the blood, and figure out what it's acting on in the bacteria in order to define those precise mechanisms. So it'll all be very molecular work that's designed to understand the mechanisms, the interactions between the mechanisms and the bacterium and the deer.
Now, this study looked at white-tailed deer. What about other species of deer?
Yeah, so white-tailed deer are the principal species that we have here in the Northeast and upper Midwest where Lyme disease is endemic. So it's the most important deer species. There are other things like sika deer and mule deer and other species that in other parts of the country support ticks that transmit things like Lyme disease. And interestingly enough, some of those deer had already been studied and known to have this effect on the Lyme pathogen, but it hadn't been studied in white-tailed deer, the most important species. And one of the reasons for that is, well, first of all, it's somewhat difficult to work with white-tailed deer because they're a game species, and so it's difficult to get blood. But more importantly, it's difficult to get blood from deer that haven't likely been fed on by ticks that have Lyme disease. There probably is no place in New England or the upper Midwestern United States where such deer would exist. So that's where it was very valuable to have these collaborators at the University of Auburn that had a captive deer population that had not been exposed to ticks or Lyme in the past.
Looking beyond this study, I wonder if there are any predictions for how active, I don't know if that's the right choice of words, of a Lyme season this spring, summer, fall might be based on the conditions this winter and so far this spring in the Northeast.
You know, Jim, we get that question almost every year, like, is it going to be a big year or a small year? And while some of my colleagues like to prognosticate about that, we know that it's really hard to predict whether there's going to be an exceedingly high or an exceedingly low season. And what we just encourage people to know is that ticks are going to start being active as soon as it warms up above 40 degrees. They're going to remain active throughout the spring and into early July, when then there's somewhat of a senescence as it goes into larval season, and then there's another peak season in the fall. And so whether it's 5 ticks that are going to bite you in your backyard or 3.5, it's probably very difficult to predict because things are so localized. So we just want people to be aware more about the seasonality rather than the absolute numbers.
The Best of Our Knowledge is Jim Levulis speaking with Dr. Steve Rich of the New England Center of Excellence in Vector-Borne Diseases at UMass Amherst. You're listening to The Best of Our Knowledge. This has been The Best of Our Knowledge, episode 1700. The Best of Our Knowledge is a national production of WAMC Northeast Public Radio. Thanks to producer Lucas Willard. Our executive producer is Dr. Alan Chartog. The latest on our national productions programs is available via the Airwaves newsletter and our flagship station's website, WAMC.org. Until next time, I'm Jody Cowan.